Greetings and welcome to Outlaw Gamer Radio, the official podcast of OutlawGamers.com. This is the show where we live to play and play to live. I'm Brent Adams, joined by a man who always keeps a wingsuit and a rocket launcher ready for justice, Mr. Lauren Baumgarten. Lauren!
So if you tell everybody about my secret identity, it's no longer going to be secret.
It wasn't much of a secret to begin with because there's only one crazy Jewish guy running around with a wingsuit and a rocket launcher, and it's my best bud, L-Bomb.
That's a true story. Man, I am excited about the reference there very, very much.
Me too.
It is. We actually got some really cool stuff to talk about this week, Brent. I say that like usually we don't have cool stuff to talk about. We're bringing back an oldie but goodie into the show format, at least for now, and people will understand that in a little bit. But
that's right.
It's an exciting week, Brent. It's an exciting week. But before we jump into it, you had a couple of things you wanted to mention. Happy, if I may, May 4th to you.
If you may. 4th to me, you certainly may, sir. Happy May 4th, everybody. Happy Star Wars Day. I know that you're listening to this probably on the 5th, but that's okay because we're recording it on one of the most important days of the year, which is the unofficial Star Wars holiday, and we just want to wish a very happy May the 4th to Star Wars fans everywhere. And I suspect that we're going to have a lot more Star Wars fans somewhere around the 18th of December.
Yeah, that's a true story. Although I don't know how much longer, Brent, that this will be the unofficial Star Wars holiday, because I believe I can't remember exactly what the organization is called, but it's the United People with Lisps of America find May the 4th be with you holiday a little bit insulting.
That damn politically correct crowd always crashing for fun.
That's right. Yes, no, it is Star Wars Day, and you're right. Soon we'll be up to our earballs in Star Wars.
We should go ahead and start. Petitioning our senators and congressmen to get it made an official U.S. holiday. Maybe if they concentrate on that, it'll keep them from doing so much damage other places. Speaking of damage, and not the snarky kind. I mentioned last week, of course, the catastrophic earthquake that rocked through Nepal and has killed, I think, over 6,000 people. The video game industry is getting involved, as you probably can imagine. The Far Cry dev team, who of course spent so much time in Nepal, soaking up the culture and the details for Far Cry 4, they have gotten involved. They've pledged to contribute up to $100,000 in matching funds through the Canadian Red Cross. Bungie, the developers behind EVE Online, and probably others are also getting in. And I wanted to mention at the top of the show, there's going to be a link there where you can read a little bit more about this. And we just want to mention it because those people could definitely use the help, and it's great to see the video game industry stepping up to respond to that situation. So we just want to mention that to everybody, and we are hoping for the best there.
That's right. We are indeed, Brent. And so moving from helping people out in a time of destruction to actually destroying stuff.
To just causing a time of destruction.
Oh, my God. Really?
Just causing a time of destruction. I didn't even mean to do that. I didn't.
Why? Why would you do that?
Jesus. Oh, God. I feel itchy and
it hurts, doesn't it?
Need a shower. God.
It hurts when Daniel's inside of you, doesn't it?
Don't ever say that to me. All right. Move on to the story.
Yeah, Brett. So first up in the garage this week, we have the Just Cause 3 gameplay. Let me try that again. So first up in the garage this week, Brent, we have the Just Cause 3 gameplay reveal trailer. It wasn't too long ago that we found out about the existence of Just Cause 3, though.
Yes.
I guess it doesn't come as a complete surprise, but the pleasant surprise is that, at least for now, it's slated to come out of holiday this season, 2015. And this was our first gameplay trailer. And Brent, I gotta say that I watched the trailer. So I watched the trailer and I thought to myself, here's another, we were just talking about this.
Yep.
Here's another, quote, gameplay trailer that isn't actually gameplay. It's just shot in engine, and they're sort of trying to show you what the gameplay will be like and calling that the gameplay trailer.
Right.
But I don't know if you noticed, Brent, and this is really odd in my opinion.
Okay.
But if you click the show more under the YouTube link, it expands the text that's listed there under the YouTube link. And under that expanded text, it says explicitly, this is actual gameplay footage. It was shot using cinematic angles, but there's no cinematics in this game. This is actual in this trailer. This is actual gameplay footage. And I got to tell you, man, that makes me very, very happy.
I'm pretty happy about it too. Although I mean, they don't specify what platform it's on, but it's almost certainly on the PC.
But of course.
I mean, not that the PS4 and Xbox One versions aren't going to look great.
The parity between current gen and PC right now is not that far. The disparity is not that far apart.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But anyway, the thing that I was going to say is, I'm not really sure, given the fact that it is camera angles and so forth, from within the engine, is this really all that different from an in-engine trailer? I mean, I don't know if there's that much of a distinction, and I felt like...
Oh, I think so, absolutely. In the in-engine trailer, you potentially can do things that you can't do during the game, during gameplay.
During actual gameplay. Okay, so anyway, but the only thing about that seems hinky to me is if it is actual gameplay, if there's nothing... If they release... some sort of utility that allows you to have and that could be part of the game to begin with. But if the game allows you to move the camera around to capture a la a GTA 5 director's mode sort of thing, and it's going to look exactly like what we see in this trailer, why wouldn't you say that in the trailer? Why would you make people work for that information? I don't get that part.
Yeah, I don't know.
But anyway, that aside, the game looks fantastic, and because I started watching this trailer while we were on the horn, and the moment that I see dude falling through the sky wearing a wingsuit with an RPG strapped to his back, I thought, and you've got my money.
Yeah, we talk a lot,
Well
Brent,
done. You have my money.
About not pre-ordering and that sort of thing.
I'm not pre-ordering.
I have to say,
I'm just telling you.
But I got to say that I looked at this game and I thought to myself, this looks like a next gen. Even if it's just a next gen version of Just Cause 2.
Yeah, like that's a bad thing.
I'm pretty much on board. Like I really they would have to actually go backwards from their last game, which was several years ago, to make me not feel like their game is worth $60.
No, I mean it's a Just Cause game on next gen platforms. What else? I mean, what else do you need to know? I guess.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. I'm assuming we're going to get to see more of this at E3.
Yeah, I would imagine.
And I couldn't be more excited. It looked fantastic. It looked gorgeous. To me, that's what it looked like. It looked like Just Cause 2, only visually much better next gen. And so now they have to. I think the task is for them to show us what is different or what has progressed since Just Cause 2 besides the visuals.
Yep. I'm anxious to get more details, and I suspect that we will at E3 or some other time not too distant in the future.
Are we going to be at E3 this year?
I physically no. I mean, I won't be there. I'll be changing diapers or something like that.
Again, with the Daniel talk. Let's just move on from Daniel.
Something else not too distant in the future.
No, the very near future, as a matter of fact. This
End
Friday,
of the week, as it turns out, is
which I honestly had no idea this was coming that soon.
The release of Project Cars. We have the launch trailer here in the dock, but there's a lot of details and other media floating around at this point. The game for racers by racers. Or maybe it's by racers for racers. But anyway, the point is that Project Cars sounds like a game that Brent Adams could get into, because Brent Adams has espoused in the past his love for racing and for racing-centric games as opposed to car-centric games or just driving-centric games.
I feel like there's a however here because Brent Adams is talking about Brent Adams in the third person.
There is no however, other than to say, however, Brent Adams is not sure if he's going to get this game immediately upon launch because Brent Adams is really, really wanting to get GTA 5 on the PC. But anyway, I have to tell you that from everything I know about Project Cars, and I get a fair amount of messages on this from people who suspect this game will be up my alley, and they're right. I am pretty excited. I really like everything that the game purports to be. I really like everything that the game is aspiring to be. And the question for me is all whether or not it succeeds on those fronts and at a level of quality that people are going to really find compelling. So for me, basically, this is just a game that I've got on my watch list that I'm waiting to see what players and reviewers think about it once it hits this Friday.
Yeah, I'm really curious too, Brent. I've got a strange relationship with racing games, and I've had a couple that I've really enjoyed. I'm not, I have no interest in sim racing at all.
Right.
But racing games can be among, if not the most beautiful, graphically beautiful video games made, and they are a lot of fun. But I have to find the right balance for me. I played the crap out of Flat Out. Played the crap out of that game. Loved it. Really enjoyed Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. And rather enjoyed. I played Need for Speed Rivals, and I rather enjoyed Drive Club as well. But for me, it's a combination of two things. The racing games, I feel like, tend to get in their own way frequently with what goes on between races. And so I think that's a real issue that I've seen a lot in racing games. And then, for me, there's that balance of any video game where you make the game the proper difficulty and you want it to be hard enough to be challenging to somebody, but not so hard to keep that sort of carrot out in front of them, but not so hard that it's frustrating. And for me with racing games, that's an extremely prevalent issue.
Right.
And so I'm really interested in this. I guess it says 100 unique locations, multiple disciplines, dynamic weather, fully customizable UI, that sort of thing. And so I would be totally on board with this. My one concern, and I have to wait to see reviews, is how well does the game scale to somebody who doesn't like sim racing?
Right. Right. Is there going to be an entry point for people that are more interested in just a pick up and play arcade like experience, something that leans more that direction?
Yep.
I mean, it's a good question. I'm
curious. It looks gorgeous.
It does. It looks fantastic. It's hard for any game to be all things to all people, and certainly racing games are no different, particularly when you got meatheads like me in the world. But
right, who want hyper accurate.
Well, it's not, because hyper accuracy is. I'm under no delusions. I mean, I've driven cars very, very fast on roads that weren't designed for very, very fast cars. I know sort of where my talent wall is in the real world, and so it's not that it's got to be like realistic, where I actually need the reaction time of an F1 driver because I don't have it. But the thing that I like focusing on is if you apply the fundamental strategies and techniques of racing driving, that those are the things that that advance you through the game. That they don't sort of like invent new physics that allow you to win by power sliding through turns and so forth. So I'm looking for a game that can trick me into thinking that I actually am decent at racing.
Well, and that's actually the central piece of that. I mean, we had this discussion all the time when I was community manager for the golf club.
Yeah.
It's not about making it follow all the exact sort of pattern that golf does, because if that were the case, you would spend years, frustrating years, getting even moderately decent at the video game. And that's not what we're trying to recreate. What we're trying to recreate is the emotional experience, the generalized emotional experience of the game, with as accurate as possible, maybe 90% an accurate representation of the mechanics of the game,
right,
except for the stuff that sort of suffers by nature of being a video game.
Yeah, it's a tightrope walk, and I guess the thing that I want is I want something that has like the fundamental, or something that has the focus on racing technique and fundamentals that the Gran Turismo series has always had, combined with some of the more innovative aspects of like Forza 4, which was the last one that I played. But I really liked a lot of the things that Forza was doing in terms of its online component, in terms of its head-to-head stuff, playing against friends, ghost cars, where you and your friends are competing on the same tracks. There's a lot of really great innovative features that were going into that, and I would love to see because those things were very, very fun. Like, that's sort of the fun juice
the fun juice. Did you really?
In that game for me, as opposed to it being like a more sort of fun arcadey, casual style game. Those were the things that got the fun for me. And so I would love to see a game that was able to kind of, just work both of those sides of the equation.
Yeah. And so I'm hopeful that it's good for you in that way, because
me too.
I know how passionate you are about that, and I'm kind of looking forward to seeing if maybe that a more casual player like myself will be able to play it, because it looks really fun.
We should find out pretty soon. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next item in the garage, and that is there is going to be a PC gaming press conference at E3 2015. It's actually, this is something that we might talk more about as we get closer to E3, which is, knocking on the door soon. A month away or so.
Yep.
And there's going to be several companies that are going to be having press conferences this year for the first time. But there's no one company behind this PC gaming focused press conference. It's going to be it's going to have speakers like Cliff Bleszinski, Dean Hall. There's going to be developers there: Blizzard, Square Enix, Devolver Digital, Bohemia Interactive, and so it really is going to be spearheaded by a number of personalities and companies that are invested in PC gaming. This is a quote from the story that we are linking to on Polygon. Quote, PC gaming is in a golden age with more powerful and affordable hardware than ever before. Thousands of games available through Steam, Origin, and other platforms. And this must come from an EA person then. And millions of viewers regularly watching esports online. This is from the announcement. Now for the first time, the PC platform will have its own event during E3 where the community will be able to celebrate this era with some of the biggest names in PC gaming and see the innovations that lie ahead. So if you are a PC gamer, and God knows I am, you can definitely mark your calendar down for that one. They're going to be Twitch streaming it, and this event is going to occur from 5 to 8 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesday, June 16th. And you can check that out once again on Twitch. So, Lauren, you're a PC gamer.
Yes.
Is that cool or what?
No, it is very, very cool. I could not be more excited that this is happening. I'll talk about at the end of the show. I just did something this week that I have never done before, which is I hooked up my PC to my TV.
Oh, really?
And I could not be more excited about PC gaming now. And so coming out in November, we have the Steam Link. We also have the advent
I'm excited about that.
This isn't necessarily a new thing, but they're getting more and more affordable AC routers, AC wireless routers, which you can pick up a good one for around $150 now. Yeah. Throw in the Steam Link for $50, with which I found out you can use. I have a wired Xbox 360 controller that I have used with my PC historically. Right. That will work with the Steam Link. Yeah. You don't have to get it. So the Steam Link is $50, and I think that's even going to bring more of a renaissance to PC gaming. I'm very excited about being able to play my PC games on my television, on my 50-inch television, and I could not be more excited about this at E3, man. I mean, I think it's awesome. I
agree.
PC gaming deserves it. You've been brought into the fold
in a big bad way,
and many, many more people, I think, might be brought into the fold moving forward.
I hope so, because I mean, there's definitely great stuff in PC gaming, and it is a very it's a distinct experience from console gaming. I mean, there are certain games that like a major third party release, like a Batman Arkham Knight. I don't know that a Batman Arkham Knight is going to be substantially different on PC as opposed to on console.
Oh, it looks different.
I mean, better, more graphic fidelity. But in terms of the actual game experience, if you played that on your TV using an Xbox 360 controller through Steam Link, as opposed to playing it on your Xbox One or your PlayStation 4.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, correct.
I don't know that it would be all that different in experience. But
versus like playing Battlefield multiplayer or something like that.
Correct, but there are experiences that are exclusive to the PC that are very profound. Or things like Skyrim, where you can play on the PC with squillions and squillions of mods and really change the game experience fundamentally. So it's cool. It's one of those things that, and I do think that the entry point is getting lower and lower because there's some really, really fantastic high performance graphics cards that will
for
not
mid 200s.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that will not cost you an arm and a leg.
They used to be not many years ago. Those were $500 a piece.
I know, and so that's encouraging. So it's one of those things that I'm excited about, and I hope other people will be as well. Something that Lauren is very excited about is finally getting the opportunity to play with Batgirl. I mean, as Batgirl. What did you think I meant? We've got the Batman Arkham Knight season pass details, and there's actually quite a bit here. Let's just run through the list. What do you say, Lauren?
Yeah, this is interesting, Brent, because gamers were a little upset because Rocksteady and Warner Brothers announced this season pass for Batman. It's $40,
yeah.
2/3 of the cost of the main game.
Yeah.
They said the content's going to come out over 6 months, but they gave no details as to what was going to be. And I think they realized that was a mistake, so they put out more information. And I got to say, man,
we realized that was a mistake.
I'm pretty pleased that the first 3 things they mentioned are all story content.
I agree.
And I think that's pretty exciting. So the
list.
first one, Batgirl, A Matter of Family. Now, we don't know if this is going to be in order, but Batgirl, A Matter of Family. It says an all-new prequel story expansion in an entirely new location where you play as Batgirl for the very first time in the Arkham series. The next one they list is the Season of Infamy. Play as Batman in all-new story missions featuring legendary supervillains invading Gotham City with new story arcs, missions, and gameplay features. Wonder what those gameplay features are. Gotham City Stories. Play as Batman's key allies in narrative missions, extending their storylines from both before and after the events in Batman Arkham Knight. So those are the 3 story-driven ones.
Yeah.
Then you have... Yes, were you going to say something?
You know what? I want to talk about those, but let's go ahead and finish detailing the DLC, and then we'll come back.
So then you have 3 other things. You have legendary Batmobiles with themed tracks. So drive the most iconic Batmobiles from Batman's 75-year history on custom-built racetracks, each themed to that Batmobile-specific era. Every Batmobile will be drivable across every track. Now, I don't know if this, personally, to me, if this is meaningful, because I don't know yet if the Batmobile tracks are meaningful or not, but... Crime Fighter challenge maps. Engage in a series of new challenge maps utilizing the unique playstyles of Batman and his allies. And then character skins, a variety of skins from across the eras for Batman, Robin, Nightwing, and Catwoman. And so those are the things they detail, Brent. And I'm really happy to hear the story content because historically there's been a couple of little story content DLCs and then the challenge maps.
Yeah,
and frankly, the challenge maps are meaningless to me.
The challenge maps are fun. I enjoy, going back. I particularly like the Predator challenge maps, the ones that are very stealth centric because I like stealth gameplay. So those are enjoyable, but I would much rather have what they are proposing here. This harkens back to like the Harley's Revenge DLC for Arkham City, and but more of it. And I'm all about that. I think that the thing that I was thinking about is, like, honestly, because I'm just such a sucker for this, I guess they could do something like Telltale, and they could just start releasing like seasons of just Batman stories to take place within the Arkham Knight game engine. 5 stories over the course of 6 months or whatever, and I'll buy that season pass too. And they can do another season of them, and I'll buy that too. But I mean, honestly, they could just do stuff like this. They could just do like this kind of like Gotham City Stories or the Season of Infamy kind of thing, where they're just using the assets that they've got in the game and just creating new content, new stories to go along with it. They can do that till the end of time, and I'm pretty much on board. Unless there's something fundamentally broken about the game, a la Arkham Origins, that they say they're not going to fix, a la Arkham Origins. But that aside, I love what they're laying out here for the season pass. I am very, very tempted to go ahead and get this because we found was it on Green Man or was it on Steam that it was like
no, it was on Steam.
It's like $30.
It's 25% off until the game launches June 23rd.
Yeah.
The season pass is 25% off, so it's $30.
That's sorely tempting. That's sorely tempting because this sounds so good. But anyway, I'm pretty excited about that. I mean, in addition to the game, which I do want to play, I have to say that the DLC for it actually sounds worthwhile.
It does sound worthwhile, and to be fair, it's a little easier for us. We had one of our listeners who has chosen to remain nameless gift us each a copy of Batman Arkham Knight, which we received this last week. So thank you.
What do we say to that other than just wow
to that masked unknown listener, that dark figure in the alley who wants to remain nameless? Yes, it was very, very kind. So thank you. And but because of that, it does make spending $30 on the deals on the season pass
easier,
a little bit more palatable. And I have to say, I too am tempted, Brent. And this is one of those things where, I think the best pre-order bonus in the world is a significant monetary discount.
Well,
so 25% off is not insignificant. And at $30, it's very tempting to me too. And so we'll have to see. That may just happen. All right, guys, we are back in the clubhouse, and before we get into our topic this week, as usual, we have the clubhouse poll. Brent, why don't you lay it out for us?
All right, so last week we were talking about paid mods on Steam for Skyrim. Obviously, kind of a big deal within the PC gaming community, certainly within the Skyrim modding community. If you follow the forum over at Nexus Mods. There are people who have still not recovered from the calamity that was paid mods on Steam. But anyway, we asked you guys what was your take on Valve's foray into paid mods, and the results shook out like this. In last place with 7%, you said, I'm disappointed it didn't take off. I was curious to see where it might have gone. That was where my vote landed. 45% of you said poorly executed, but I'm in favor of the concept. But the number one answer, narrowly beating that out with 48%, was mods are supposed to be free. What else is there to understand? So,
well, you entitled bastards. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
I think it was really interesting to see people talk about this and to think about some of the more practical problems with paying for mods and things that might lead to. We talked about things like, what if an official game patch breaks your mods, like just happened with Grand Theft Auto 5 on PC. There were a lot of really good points made, things that Lauren and I didn't necessarily think to include in the discussion. So thank you everybody for bringing those to the table and just helping all of us think about the subject in a wider fashion.
Indeed. All right, Brent, let's jump into the topic this week, which is an interesting one. I say surprisingly. No, I'm just kidding. The topic this week, the title
has been very interesting, don't you think?
The topic of the clubhouse, the topic of the week in the clubhouse is, are video game auteurs a good thing? And this comes from an article on PC Gamer in which two of their writers, Andy Kelly and Sam Roberts, debate the question of whether or not auteurs are a good thing in the video game industry. And I have to say, before we go down this path, Brent, we should probably define the word.
I was going to say the exact same thing. Auteur is a French word. It's actually the French word for author, and it was developed specifically in relation to the film industry, to French New Wave film in the 60s, late 50s and early 60s. But it's a term that that I learned back in college studying film, and have always associated with directors of that medium who have strong vision that shines through in their films. Stanley Kubrick, Ridley Scott are names that come to mind. But anyway, so the practical definition for what we are discussing today is an auteur as being the creative head of a video game. The creative director is usually where that title ends up, but an individual who has such a strong artistic vision that their authorship or the perception of their authorship supersedes the publisher's constraints on the project or the collaborative contributions on the project, that you get to the end of that game and you say that is an Hideo Kojima game. Anybody else who was contributing to that game was simply there to execute Hideo Kojima's vision of what this Metal Gear game was.
Right, that's how I felt when I saw Kirby's Epic Yarn, for example. Yeah, exactly. I thought that is a Kojima game.
That's exactly right. So anyway, but I think that the underlying sort of I suppose counter argument is that video games are a very collaborative medium, that there are typically on AAA games, there are hundreds and hundreds of people working on a game, and to bestow authorship on a single person doesn't reflect the fact that so many people have contributed to the final product. And so perhaps it's not fair, or it's just not accurate to lay a game at the feet of a Ken Levine or an Hideo Kojima. And of course, there's room for both of those things to be true, I suppose. There's room for a Ken Levine to be an auteur, and there's room for another game like an Uncharted 3 to, maybe be more the result of a collaborative vision as opposed to the single focus of one individual. What do you think?
Certainly. I mean, so the question is it a good thing?
Right.
Right. The question at hand is it a good thing? And I'll tell you that the answer is yes.
Okay.
The answer. So I do think it's a good thing.
And on the road this week, we're going to talk about.
I do think it's a good thing, Brent, because I think that type of creative vision is instrumental in driving some of the best pieces of work that we have had, and a great example is Ridley Scott. He talks about Blade Runner a lot in the article, and how that was driven just overwhelmingly by this vision of his. But certainly there's many, many other examples of this. Star Wars is one of them, probably. Indiana Jones series is probably one of them. Yeah. You alluded to Stanley Kubrick. Certainly,
that guy casts a long shadow, believe it.
Indeed he does. And there's Martin Scorsese is another one, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse.
Most of the time for better.
Most of the time, but not always. He's getting long in the tooth, that guy. But I'm just kidding. I'm just poking the bear here. But I do,
Mr. Grizzly Bear.
I do think that it's a good thing. I think that, we've talked about Hideo Kojima, we talked about Ken Levine, certainly David Cage is another one who I think
very true.
Who I think brings.
You want to talk about a for better or worse case study? It'd be Mr. Cage.
Well, I mean, I happen to think it's for better, but yes, I think whether or not you like his games, I think he brings a lot to the development of interactive entertainment in general.
And his games are definitely of a singular vision. I mean, his games, you can pick it up and be a David Cage game.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
And I think that. I think it is a good thing, Brent. I mean, I don't think anybody here would disagree that the over-corporatization or marketing-driven game making or that sort of thing is in any way good for the industry. I mean, certainly, the authors of this article refer to Assassin's Creed Unity and how much that feels like a product.
Yeah.
And I would agree. Assassin's Creed has felt like a product for a long time. And I think it's to the detriment of the series, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Interestingly, Uncharted is a game that, while you may not attribute it to one person's singular vision, I almost feel like Naughty Dog is its own sort of its own singular auteur. Like there's a group of people at the head of Naughty Dog.
There's a flavor to those games, certainly, that are the result of of people like Amy Hennig and other creative types who have contributed to what those games have become.
Absolutely. But so I do think it's a good thing. I mean, I don't see the negative in it. I think there's an argument to be made of whether or not it will exist in a significant capacity and what kind of environment has to exist for someone like that to sort of rise to that level.
Yeah.
But certainly, I think it's a good thing, and I don't see a scenario in which it hurts the industry. It may hurt the person financially. I mean, but I don't see a way in which having auteurs around hurts the industry. And I don't think we're in any danger of it ever becoming an industry that is only that you have to be an auteur in order to get anything created.
I agree. And I think that there's a couple of interesting things about this that are specific to the video game industry. As for whether it's good or bad, I don't really have like a value judgment on it. I mean, to me, it's like asking if a thunderstorm is good or bad. It just is. it's a force of nature, a phenomena of nature, and I think auteurism is sort of a phenomena of human nature. The fact that there are some artists whose vision is unique, and I mean, you could watch a film, for an example, and you could say, okay, is this a Simon West movie? Is it a Wolfgang Peterson film? There's like enough overlap that it doesn't immediately become apparent that you're watching a film by, say, like a Guy Ritchie, who I think his movies do tend to have a little bit more of a signature style, or Michael Bay, for that example. I think that, although I'm not a fan, I can acknowledge that, that Michael Bay as a filmmaker, his movies feel like Michael Bay films. So it's just one of those things that I think that, some artists are going to have that quality, that sort of uniqueness of vision, and others are not. And so it's not really good or bad. It simply is a byproduct of certain creative people and processes. As for the notion that auteurism might be a bad thing from the standpoint of, it doesn't give enough credit to the people involved and all that kind of thing, I guess I don't feel that strongly about it. Because while video games and films are both collaborative processes, that doesn't mean that they're partnerships. There is usually, not always, but there is usually one person at the top of the chain through which decisions are filtered, and who has the ultimate veto power on, whether or not this feature stays or goes, or this color changes from red to yellow. And so I don't think that there's any disrespect in acknowledging the fact that, yes, hundreds and hundreds of people work on a video game, but they typically do so at the behest of a creative director, of someone who has a vision to accomplish the game, and their job is to execute that person's vision. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I simply think that that's just typically the most effective way to manage a large-scale production. You can't have hundreds and hundreds of people all working autonomously, making decisions, and expect to get something as cohesive as if you have one individual steering the ship.
Right. I think it's not only the best, most effective way to manage it, but it's also the most effective way to get compelling content, in my opinion. And it's one of the most effective ways to get the most compelling content.
There's a threshold to that, though. Just to caveat real fast, I think that below a certain scale, I think that you can totally do that. I mean, like if you're like a small development team, you've got maybe say 5 to 10 people who all work in the same room. I think that you actually probably can afford to be pretty collaborative and still be cohesive. But as it scales up, I think that ability to be effective reduces.
Well, and I think Uncharted is a great example of, even in a larger thing, a larger scale, I think you can have a few key people that ultimately have creative control, but that doesn't also mean there's no collaboration from any of the other people either. That doesn't mean it's a choice of where. And I didn't mean to say it is the most effective.
Right.
I think it's more appropriate to say it is one of the most effective, because if the pool of control gets too diverse,
you start getting too many cooks in the kitchen, kind of thing, and
you do. And so a couple others I would mention, Brent. Tim Schafer is certainly one that I think has a singular voice. Genova Chen, who I think made the greatest game ever made, has a very sort of specific voice that comes through in his games. Jonathan Blow, Fumito Ueda with Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, and the upcoming Last Guardian.
Promise.
It had to be said. There are several of these types of people throughout video games, and I think, like I said, I think they're a very good thing. It's not the only way to do things.
No.
But they've created. I mean, the reason I mention these other names is to get you to think about some of the games that these people have created. And they've,
interestingly, yes. I mean, some of those games that you mentioned are relatively small in scale, that are not a AAA, I'm trying to, like a Last of Us or a Red Dead Redemption or something like that.
Right, like Journey, for example, or
Journey's a very, very small game by comparison.
Jonathan Blow, Braid.
So that's the kind of the interesting thing about it, is that I think that it's actually much easier for people working at the scale of a game like Journey or Braid to be an auteur. It's much, much easier for a single person to write and develop a game like that, or to sort of have that sense of authorship over a small game. I think it becomes increasingly more difficult as the game becomes larger, as more and more people and more money are in the pot, are part of the equation. It's much, much more difficult for, I think, a unique sort of voice to shine through that, because there is so much pressure to
be financially successful.
Yeah, exactly, to appeal to a mainstream audience and be financially successful. So in a sense, I think it's probably more noteworthy for somebody to be an Hideo Kojima, working with those budgets, working with that large group of people on such expansive games. I think it's much, much more difficult to do at that level.
Certainly, and it does bear mentioning, however, that as the guys alluded to at the end of their conversation, that anytime you, as an American, start using a French word to describe something like that, it sounds somewhat preternaturally sort of asshole-ish, right? So
I think pretentious is the word.
Yes, that's exactly right. But I do think I think it's good for the industry, and I think it would be bad for the industry if these types of creative personalities weren't given some freedom to muster these kind of resources.
Yeah.
To create games like Metal Gear Solid 4 and what I hope Metal Gear Solid 5 will be.
I agree. Do you think that do you think that putting a single person, there's certainly, I can't really think of a video game person off the top of my head, but I like going back to films as an example, noticeably absent above the titles of the Lord of the Rings movies are a Peter Jackson film. And the fact is that, he chose not to put his authorship on those movies because they were such a collab. This is Ian McKellen in one of the commentary tracks explaining this. So it's secondhand. Maybe there's another reason, but ostensibly he did not take a film by Peter Jackson above the title because he felt that it was such a collaborative thing, and that he did not feel comfortable assigning the authorship to himself.
Right.
Is there a point to be made?
Well, Kojima doesn't have that problem.
No, he doesn't. But
not moving
what
forward.
I'm saying is, like, does that make Kojima an asshole for doing that? Is Michael Mann an asshole for putting a Michael Mann film above the title to Heat or Collateral or Miami Vice?
I don't know. I'm not. You know what? Honestly, I think that decision is one that's made by the people that work with and around him.
Right.
That's a question you'd have to ask somebody that works for Kojima-san, and if they said, if you asked them if they thought he was an asshole for doing that, and they all said absolutely not, the guy's a genius and it is his singular vision that has driven this project, then you have your answer. And if they all say yes, we did most of the design on this game and he's full of it,
right,
then you have your answer. You can't. I don't think you can know that unless you're part of the behind the scenes family.
All right, so let's talk about one other aspect of this, and that is the commercial aspect of this. One of the reasons that studios like to have the film by tag above a title is because of the perception that it will improve the film's performance in the marketplace. The Kevin Smith's audience is always going to come out for a Kevin Smith film. Michael Mann's audience is always going to come out and see his movies. Michael Bay has an audience of people that really like Michael Bay films, and whenever he directs something or even produces something, they're going to go see it to have that Michael Bay film experience. Do you think that there's a commercial advantage to that kind of recognition with video games?
I don't know. It seems like people we've sort of trended away from that in general. In film, I don't feel like I see that very often anymore, and I don't know if that's because we are such a plugged-in society that information gets out in multiple other ways. But Yeah, I mean, certainly, it has value to me if it's a Hideo Kojima game, or if it has if it's a David Cage game, or if it's the Hauser brothers from Rockstar. Like, yeah, to me that has meaning. Commercially, I don't know. We haven't built that culture too much in video games, but again, I wouldn't be opposed to building that culture, because I think building that culture might drive more people at that level to have access to those kind of resources with more creative control. I don't know.
Right. Do you think that being an auteur is something that creators within the video game industry ought to aspire to? Should they aspire to being unique and standing out above all else? I mean, there are certainly people, although maybe Assassin's Creed Unity is not the best example, but I mean, certainly there are a lot of people that like the Assassin's Creed franchise, and perhaps might not want somebody with too strong a voice to come into it and to mess up the formula. Like, as an example, if you and I formed a development studio, and the name of our development studio was Princess Leia's Brass Bikini, and we were going to work on an Assassin's Creed game, it would get around very quickly that we were going to eliminate all the features or all of the future stuff involving Desmond, and it was only going to take place in the past, and there wasn't going to be any of this hopping back and forth thing, and people might not like us bringing our unique vision to their game. Do you think that there's a downside on that level?
I don't know, Brent, actually, and that really does make me, and this isn't just a segue to get out of the segment, I swear to God. It really does. I'm really curious to hear what the audience has to say on this, because I think, I don't know, it's an interesting question about whether or not, for example, you would want, say, what if Kojima was offered the next Assassin's Creed game?
Right.
Would you want that? Or would you want... Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that question. And should people aspire to be auteurs? That's a difficult thing to say. That's a conversation that, applies to all artistic endeavors. Is aspiring to be different for the sake of different have value? Does it have creative value?
Yeah.
Does it have market value? And those are some pretty deep questions. And I don't know. I mean, I think,
and there's really probably no right or wrong answer. That question has got to be answered by every individual, because they have to decide for themselves what is most. I mean,
sometimes I find pieces that are different for the sake of being different. Sometimes what I call artistic masturbation.
Yeah.
Very off-putting to me and unnecessary in the grander scheme of things. But then again, sort of bucking up against the normal trend and just trying consciously to break out of what's currently accepted, not infrequently leads down new and interesting avenues. And so I think I think that's a difficult thing to say. I do think that people experimenting and developing a voice is never a bad thing. And so, those are kind of bigger and deeper and more interesting questions. But I'm curious to hear what our listeners think about that, about the idea, as you said, about the idea of would you want a singular voice, a specific voice, to come in to some of your games, or do you appreciate these kind of people out there, or does it even matter to you? Do you not care if the Kojimas and the Tim Schafers and the Ken Levines and the Genova Chens and those people who have really distinct voices disappeared? Would you care? Do you play games for that reason? Right. And I think it's a good question.
I agree. I would also like to hear from our listeners who are developers themselves, who have worked on games. I would be very interested to hear what their thoughts are on it. Whether or not they feel that it's a slight against their efforts if one person is kind of assigned the credit on a game in that way, if it's something that bothers them, or if they feel that it is deserved based on their own experiences. So I'm very, very anxious to get feedback from our audience on this subject, as well as the other interesting things we've talked about in this episode.
Have I said the word interesting a lot?
Maybe you have. Okay, everybody, let's hit the road and talk about some of the games that we've been playing this week. Lauren, back to your old stomping grounds, I see.
Yeah, well, so I told you, Brent, earlier in the show that I did something this week that I can't believe I've never done before, and that is I hooked up my PC directly to my television.
Yep.
My controller stretches over to the couch, and I'm able to play my PC games on my 50-inch TV just like I was playing a console. And I got to tell you, I felt like a little kid in a candy store.
Ain't bad at all.
Not bad at all. And so I went back to the golf club, which is my old stomping grounds, and damn it, does this game look good on PC. And there's been some updates. There's been a DLC pack that came out that includes a season mode, a new tropical theme. It's going to get a second theme. They've added out of bounds to the game and drop balls and all these things that have to do with golf that you don't have any idea what I'm talking about, Brent. And
I know what you're saying, buddy.
No, you don't. You have no idea. Have you picked up a golf club?
Yeah, I went to a driving range.
I attacked somebody once.
I went to a driving range with a friend of mine one time, and that's the only time I've held an honest to goodness golf club in my life. All of my other experiences have been at putt-putt courses.
Yes, and where there's not really unplayable lies and handicaps, but
no.
The game it's just so good, man, and so I've really been enjoying going back, seeing what the creators are doing with the new theme, and so that was a tremendous amount of fun. I pretty much went through and clicked on almost every game I have installed on Steam to see if it worked with the controller, because the Steam big picture interface does not accurately represent games that work with controllers, and it's super frustrating and annoying. So anyway, I clicked on all the games. I played a little bit of Hot Pursuit. I played a bunch of stuff, and I opened up Alien Isolation, thinking, okay, maybe this is what I need to get back into Alien Isolation.
I don't know if you can see it, but my one eyebrow is up, as if to say fascinating.
As if to say, I played it for about 30 minutes, and I wanted to throw my controller at the television. and mostly, Brent, because what pissed me off more than anything, I have no forgiveness for a game that puts a checkpoint in the dumbest possible effing place.
Right.
And I was in this place where I have to, I don't even remember what I'm doing, but I'm on the ship or whatever. And I have to go to this console that has 3 different televisions on it,
okay,
or 3 different monitors on it. And you have to do something at each of the monitors, a little like mini game,
okay,
right? And so each one is separate. So you go up to one, and they're stupid mini games, like down at the bottom of the screen, it says 22 and 13, and at the top, it says 26 and 17, and you have to move it to the right until both numbers change properly.
Okay.
That's literally the mini game. It's like ludicrous. And the other mini game was, here's all these scrolling numbers. Click the cursor when the white one passes by.
So it's a slot machine.
It's awful. It's awful. But the checkpoint, of course, Brent, is immediately before you have to do this, and then there's a cinematic.
and if something messes up, you got to go back and do all the mini games again.
Entirely.
Oh, that's
every time you die, you have to do the mini game. You have to, and so
I agree. That's pretty foul.
I wasn't pissed off so much as the fact that I kept getting killed, and how was I supposed to sneak around them? And like, I recognized that I was relearning the game, and there's these androids in the game. There's like there's no room for getting caught by them. It's a really pretty hardcore stealth game.
Yeah.
But the fact that every time I did it, like, they didn't make the checkpoint after those things in the cinematic, instead of, literally immediately before those things in the cinematic. It's not like they made it like 3 minutes before, and so you just kind of played back that story. It was just, I have zero patience for that. And when something like that happens in a game, it symbolizes to me, like, this is just poor game design.
I agree. To me, that seems like a pretty big oversight. That seems that something like that shouldn't be happening in 21st century game design.
Checkpoint placement should be game design 101.
Yeah,
and if you screw that up, it makes me not want to play the rest of the game, because I may get past it after 45 minutes. But then what's going to happen in the next room and the next room and the next, you know what I mean? Like,
it does. It sets up this expectation of, I'm just going to be frustrated by this.
Right. So I honestly don't know that I will ever play it again. I tried. I gave it a good 30 plus minutes. And at no point was I having fun.
Yeah. Well, that's ultimately what it's all about. Interesting that you talk about Alien Isolation, because that's probably going to be the game that I start picking up next. Because I have finished the main quest of Skyrim. I have finished the main storyline to The Elder Scrolls V.
I didn't even know that was possible. I didn't think there was a way to do that.
Well, I mean, in the sense that minor spoilers, in the sense that the main story is about Alduin and his reign of terror and him, coming back to eat the entire world. That threat has been abated, is what I am saying. But that doesn't mean, that's not to say that there's not tons of other stuff going on. Ultimately, that is just, sort of one story thread in a lot of stuff that's going on. You've still got the war between the Nords and the Empire, the Revolution. You've got innumerable, small little side quests and things like that happening. And somebody, I think in the comments, or I can't remember if it was in the comments on our site or maybe on Twitter, but somebody had just said something to me about, hope you don't quit playing Skyrim after you finish the main story, because I saw that the side quest stuff to be really maybe even the most interesting. And I just want to say that I'm not going to stop playing Skyrim. I haven't. I mean, I defeated Alduin. Come on, I'm just going to say it. I defeated Alduin sometime midweek last week, and I've been doing nothing but going back and doing side quests and stuff like that. And I mean, they're right. It is fascinating. Just this morning I was playing, and this really interesting thing happened. I mean, you'll be playing the game and you'll be riding along, and you'll occasionally get attacked, waylaid. Usually, though, it's bandits, or occasionally it's a Dark Brotherhood assassin who has been dispatched by somebody because you stole a roll of parchment off their desk, or something like
Bastard.
that. But this one was really interesting. It was a cultist, and I can't remember. It was it wasn't the name, but it was like like a Bothan cultist or something like that. And so this guy came at me and my party, and we took him down. And so I'm searching his body, and he's got this book on him, and this book is this journal detailing like a ceremony, like a secret society getting together to worship some sort of god, and the god's name is Bothan, or whatever this B word is that I can't exactly recall right now. But anyway, it details this fascinating ceremony in which a bunch of followers get together and invoke this god who shows up. It's actually a she. It's a goddess, I suppose. And she actually appears and basically, says, why have you invoked me? And they're like, oh, we worship and adore you. And she says, well, justify your existence to me. And the first guy's like, well, I worship and adore you. Dead. And the next guy doesn't really have anything to say. He can't come up with anything. Dead. And so one by one, she works her way through dozens of these people who have assembled until she gets down to the last two. And she gets to the next to last person and says, okay, next to last guy, justify your existence. And he immediately draws his sword and kills the guy beside him and says, something about, I justified my existence by taking this guy's life to save my own, by leaving my mark on the world through the blood that I shed, and I offer you this sword. And she says, indeed, and she lets this guy live. And it says something about, like, if this story gets your blood boiling, then, you come to this location and be part of this thing or whatever. And I'm just like, this is fucking fascinating. I mean, just like a really, really kind of cool backstory. So I'm that's going to be kind of the next thing I get into. I don't know if that's part of the vanilla game or if it's part of some of the DLC, because No, I think that's part of the vanilla game. When the whole paid mods thing happened, the DLC for the game went on sale, and I picked up everything. I got Dragonborn, Dawnguard, and Hearthfire, because they were like 50. I think Hearthfire was 50% off, and I think the other two were like 63% off. But anyway, it was a pretty good deal. So I've got all the DLC for the game now too, and obviously, I'm starting to see those both of the kind of the storylines from those two story DLCs, Dawnguard and Dragonborn, coming into play in the world. But anyway, I'm not going to be quitting Skyrim anytime soon. It's just that I felt like I needed to finish that main story to allow myself to, I guess, give myself permission to go ahead and move on to another game, because I can't just play Skyrim. That can't be the only thing I play all year long. I got to move on to other things and play other
Could be.
other
It's
things
that
as
good of a
well.
game.
But the thing is, I'm always going to like Skyrim's going to be that game that I always come back to, a couple of times a week or something and take some nibbles at. But I didn't want to. I guess I didn't want to leave it in a unfinished state. Somehow in my mind, it makes sense to finish the main story and then just kind of meander my way through the rest of the stuff rather than to just sort of like be playing it with no feeling like I was ever going to reach the end in any reasonable time frame.
Dude, I don't know how many hours I spent. 12 hours, 10 hours going down the Magic College side quest.
Oh, yeah, up in Winterhold.
Yeah, absolutely loved it. There's just so much to do there.
I know, man. I mean, it really is pretty remarkable. I know that there's like I get the impression that there are certain side quests and things like that are not scripted, that are just you can go to certain individuals in the game at any time and they'll say, oh, I need a bear cleared out of this cave, or oh, there's like a group of bandits up at this location and I need you to take them out. Those kinds of quests will just repeat ad infinitum. But the amount of thought that's been put into some of the details in this game, I mean, if you just like sit down and read through some of the books that you pick up in the game, you get a real sense of how much creative focus has been brought to that world, and it's remarkable. And the fact that the community has contributed, their own full storied releases with all of the detail that they have is also pretty remarkable.
So it'll be interesting to hear you compare and contrast The Witcher, which is
very true.
I feel like is going to have a lot of similarities after so closely on the heels after having played Skyrim. I mean, I get the impression there will be, there will be side quests in The Witcher that are 10 hours long or, that kind of thing. And so it'll be interesting to hear the two compared and contrasted. All right, Brett, now
I'll have a good basis on which to do that.
That's true. Now, before we wrap up the show, Brent, I think
that's true.
You asked today.
Before we wrap up the show, we're gonna bring back a little something that I miss having in my life, which is a battle cry section. I don't know what we're gonna call this thing in the long term, but the point is that here, before we close out the show, I just want to say some shit about something that maybe nobody else cares about, but that I am exceptionally excited about. And we'll try to come up with a clever name. As a matter of fact, if anybody,
or maybe you can, right?
If anybody's got a suggestion for a clever name, I'd be happy to hear it, because I got nothing at this point. And part of the reason I feel so uninspired is because all of my imagination is captured at the moment by a game being developed called Star Force. Star Force is a unofficial sequel, a fan-made sequel to the X-Wing / TIE Fighter series. It's being developed by a guy named Vladimir Milicevic. He is a Serbian 2D, 3D artist, and he's developing this game in the Unreal Engine 4. He's got a very brief amount of sort of pre-alpha gameplay, just kind of showing off what he's been able to do so far. It's not much more than there's some ship models in space, there's a cockpit, there's pew 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 pew, and some explosion effects. But it's really just sort of a proof of concept. It's like, hey, this is kind of what I'm trying to do. But the underlying thing that he's doing, which is trying to bring a sequel to one of my favorite video game franchises ever, one of the formative franchises that I played on PC back in the day, I could not be happier about that. I will go back occasionally and play X-Wing Alliance. As a matter of fact, now that the LucasArts X-Wing games are out on PC, you can get them on Steam, you can get them on GOG. They were on sale, I think, over the weekend, actually. But I love to go back and play those games, and there are mods for those. There are people that have gone back and done high-res textures and things like that for X-Wing Alliance. But having a game set in a modern video game engine and all of the things that can be taken advantage of there, that would be remarkable. And this is one of those things that I imagine if this got off the ground, if he's actually able to kind of put together a basic game and a framework, I think about how the mod community could get in on this through the creation of content of new new ships of story missions and things like that. I think about all the things that could be brought to bear on this. I get really excited. Hopefully, he has the time and dedication to see this thing through, and we'll get to see the fruits of his labor. So anyway, Star Force, there's an article on PC Gamer I'm linking to. Go check it out. Lauren.
That sounds incredible, man. You know what it makes me think of is, have you seen the news about the new arcade game for Star Wars called Star Wars Battle Pod?
Is that the one that's got like the hemispherical screen?
Yes.
You kind of have like almost 360 degrees.
Yes, and you're flying like a snow speeder at one point.
Yeah, I've seen video of it. It looks amazing.
You haven't played it though?
No, I haven't. I don't know anywhere around me that has one.
Yeah, that made me think of it while you were talking about it. All right, Brent, it's time for my whatever we're going to call it,
battle cry-esque thing.
Shout out battle cry-esque thing, and my battle cry, for lack of a better term, this week is going to be a shout out to Wolfenstein: The Old Blood. This is a piece of DLC coming, story DLC coming for the game Wolfenstein: The New Order, which, if you didn't play it, was one of my favorite games of last year. It was a fantastic, amazing first-person shooter, a harken back to the first-person shooters of old, and done in with a perfect balance of nod to its classical roots and updating to make the features even better for today. It played just beautifully. It's really one of the best first-person shooters, single-player first-person shooters I've played in years. And now they're coming out with a piece of DLC called The Old Blood. It comes out this week, Tuesday, depending on when you're listening to this, Tuesday, May 5th. So it is out by the time you have listened to this. And I just wanted to shout out, it's $19.99. I will be checking it out at some point, and I encourage you to do so if you haven't done so already.
Is it a standalone DLC, or do you have to own the New Order to play it?
No, it's standalone, Brent. You do not have to own Wolfenstein: The New Order to play it. It is standalone content. Now, I don't know.
Go ahead.
I don't know how long it is. It spans 8 chapters, which I believe is about half as long as the original game was, but I don't know what the playtime is.
Right. I think that's actually a really good idea. Because, I never got Far Cry 3, and so had Blood Dragon been dependent on having Far Cry 3, if it had been true add-on content that you had to own Far Cry 3 for, I would never have bought it. But I did buy Blood Dragon, and I loved it, and it's actually gotten me more interested in playing Far Cry. And I don't own Wolfenstein: The New Order, but I loved the trailer for The Old Blood, and I could very easily see myself maybe picking up The Old Blood and playing it, and maybe that's what convinces me to go and play Wolfenstein: The New Order. It almost becomes, as opposed to like a demo or a beta on the front end, it almost becomes sort of a taste test to get you through the door on the back end of the game's release, and maybe bring in more people that way. I think that's a very smart idea to do these things standalone.
I agree. All right, Brent, with that, we're going to call it a show this week. Yep. As always, we want to hear what you guys think about everything we talked about, whether it's Wolfenstein: The Old Blood, Star Force, Skyrim, Alien Isolation, the Golf Club, of course, what we talked about while we were in the clubhouse, whether or not video game auteurs are a good thing for our industry, and then what we talked about while we were doing some work in the garage, Batman Arkham Knight Season Pass, PC Gaming getting its own press conference at E3, the launch of Project Cars this week in just a few days, and the gameplay reveal trailer for Just Cause 3. We want to hear what you guys think of those and all topics related to gaming. Your insight is why we're here, and the conversation is what keeps us coming back. As usual, he is Brent Adams. I am Lauren Baumgarten. And remember, you don't stop playing because you get old because you stop playing.